My name is Yurdan Stanchev. I'm the lead instructor for JPDocu School of Technical Writing. I'm the person who creates the various courses related to technical writing and technical communications field, everything around how to write software documentation, data XML, API documentation, UX writing, and information architecture are part of the subjects that I share my knowledge with my students. And today's session, in the next half an hour, we are going to look at one particular aspect of information architecture, again, with a focus on software documentation. So if your background is related to technical communications and technical writing, then this session is going to be interesting and relevant for you too. The reason why I follow up on this particular subject, which is around the card sorting UX technique and how to use it and apply it in Mural as a technical writing, as a technical writer. The reason why I do that is because several students ask me about this. What do I mean with this card sorting technique? So I realized that not that many people know already what is card sorting. And as this is a super elegant technique, today I want to show you what is this card sorting all about. And then I'm going to demonstrate how I would use card sorting to structure and organize the high-level information architecture for a software documentation set of deliverables. Okay, so this is what you can expect to see in the next few minutes. I will start with a very short definition around card sorting and what does it stand for. And then we are going to look at the particular exercise/example that I have prepared using a tool called Mural. I will also demonstrate to you how I would use this virtual whiteboard tool to do card sorting technique. Starting with the definition itself, what is actually card sorting? I started with the kind of classical definition. I just took it from the Wikipedia, and there the explanation, I believe, is pretty good. It's around a specific technique, a research and kind of design technique that you use to design user experience with some software. Using card sorting, you do a test over a group of people, which are your subjects, and based on their experience with the content you provide to them in the form of so-called cards, you generate category trees or folksonomies, which literally stands for you know how to organize and structure your content, for example, in a taxonomy, in a dendrogram, or how to label or define names for specific terms based on what those subjects, those people are using when they do the card sorting technique workshop and exercise. Like my colleagues in UX say in my company, the card sorting is their bread and butter. So if you want to deal with user experience, this is one of the things you must know for sure. It is very often applied when speaking about information architecture, when defining different workflows, structure and navigation of website content. And the good thing about it is that it is absolutely applicable also for our world of software documentation and information architecture applied to technical communications field. Now, the short definition that I can give is simply think about the card sorting as a user experience technique that allows you to research user behavior and fine-tune the exact terminology you would use or the way you would organize your software documentation deliverables. So this would be my own definition of what is this thing, card sorting. Depending on what you want to go for, what exactly do you want to research, you can use this technique literally in all of the phases of software documentation development. For example, if you want to define your folksonomy, or another way to phrase it, the right terms you should use in your documentation, you can do that in the early stages before you write your documentation, so that you can define the right terms to use for the documentation. You can use it during the documentation development process when your user guides are not yet finalized, but you want to make sure that you kind of are writing the correct set of guides. You can validate what are the patterns, the expectations of your users towards this content. So it's like in the middle of the documentation development. And on the information architecture side, you can use it after the documentation has been developed to prove, let's say, to senior management or your product owners that what you have designed makes sense for the people. For very often, there in the team could be different opinions as to what is the right way to structure and organize the documentation. You, as the technical writer, can come up with one proposal. Your product owner may come with a second one. Your development manager may have a third opinion. So who is the right person? The best way to validate who is the right person is to check what customers think is the right way to do it, and to do it in a way that is intuitive for these consumers of the information. Again, card sorting can be used to validate these theories, how things should be done. I'm using for card sorting a particular tool, and this is what I'm going to show you also today. I have experience with this tool. I'm using it a lot, and I like this experience, obviously. That's why I talk about it. This tool is called Mural. And let me show you what it actually looks like. First of all, I'll put the link in the chat if you want to give it a try. I'm not affiliated to Mural whatsoever. I just use them and I like what they're doing. So what you see on the screen is how my room, this is how it's called in Mural, looks like. Inside it, I can create different virtual whiteboards. Every time you are in Mural and you want to create a new mural, this is how they call it, what you actually produce is a simple, let's say, white virtual dashboard, which you can share with external people. All of you can work simultaneously on this virtual whiteboard. And the tool allows you to very quickly add sticky notes. So here are my notes. And it allows multiple people to work on the same board at the same time, which is super cool for online meetings. And now that all of us literally work remotely, you know, no way around it. So it comes with those fancy icons, frameworks, areas, but the most valuable thing about it are those sticky notes that you can write easily and move around. So this is what I'm using as a tool. And this is what I will show you in today's session. Now, after looking at the tool, let's take a look at what I have prepared to you. And I feel already pressed by the time, so I will try to explain it quickly. I have prepared kind of a story for you to relate to. And in this story, I want you to imagine that you work as an information architect who works at SAP. This is one of the world's leading business software providers out there, one of the largest also when we speak about software. And as an information architect, your team have just finished preparing the documentation about your software product. The software product you work on is called SAP Business Technology Platform, or SAP BTP for short. Your task is to prove to your management that the way you propose the information architecture should be organized for the entire documentation deliverable set is easy to navigate to, easy to find from the SAP customer's point of view. So you kind of have to prove to them that you did not invent out of the air how the documentation should look like, but you have some proof that what you show is intuitive and easy to use for SAP customers. In order to do so, you have invited a couple of customers to an online card sorting workshop where you're going to test your theory as to how this content must be organized. So this means that, of course, you already think you are on the right track, but to prove it to senior management, you need to do something and prove that your ideas really meet the customer expectations. So think about it like a way to validate the customer experience. In order to do so and to run this workshop, you're going to use card sorting technique. You have already went into Mural, and using sticky notes, you have prepared two sets of cards. The large cards on top are called extensibility, development, integration, what's new, and about. These are the high-level categories that you imagine could be used to structure and bundle the different user guides you have prepared. And on the right-hand side with the yellow small cards, you have written down the actual titles of the different information deliverables that needs to appear on your documentation page. You can see some examples of the content here. You have a guide called SDK for iOS. You have content which is called What is SAP Cloud Platform. You have release notes, API documentation. These are the titles where you expect people to click on those titles and navigate to the corresponding user guide or any other form of help you are offering. Now it's time for the workshop. Let's switch now to the Mural. And this is now how the actual workshop is supposed to look like. You now have the same configuration like the one I showed on my slide. But this time, this is inside Mural. So these are the real sticky notes. As you can see, I can move them around. At the beginning of the workshop, you invite into the Mural. You have, it's very simple. You just press this share button and copy the link, and people should be able to access your Mural. Actually, let's go completely wild here and see whether that works for you. I'll share with you the link to it. Let's see whether you will manage to join in while I'm showing you what we are going to do. Now, the customers get this introduction as to what is the meaning of these high-level categories, and then are being asked the following. Without explanation around what content lies behind each of those yellow cards, the customers must decide where to put each of those information deliverables to one of these categories. For example, I'm one of the customers now, I'm into the tool, and I select this card. It's called API documentation. The goal of the card sorting exercise is that I take this one and I decide where to put it. Should I put the API documentation under extensibility, development, integration, what's new, and about. There are no guidance where I should put it. It is up to me to decide what is intuitive in my case. For me, intuitive is to put API documentation under a category called development. So I just drag and drop it here. The same must happen for the rest of the documentation deliverables, and each of the customers that are in the workshop must say, you know, where should this content go? Where should it be in their opinion? While this is happening, the customers must explain to you why they think this way. They're allowed to discuss with each other what is the right place in their opinion and why do they think it should be there. For example, I may think that extensibility is the right category for content which is also called exactly the same way. But I need to explain to you that this is my logic. I would put it here because I believe it belongs to the category with the same title. It seems logical and intuitive to me. While this whole thing is happening, you as the information architect need to collect and observe. You collect information about what were customers thinking about, what was their explanation. If the customers give you permission, you can record the entire workshop so that you can hear exactly what they were thinking and how and why they decided to put things where they decided to put them. This is how I've organized it. For me, SDK for iOS was purely going for development and developers. So software development kit for iOS to me sounds like content I would offer for developers, not necessarily integrators. You see? So, and this is exactly what you want to capture. This is a sample of how I would organize the content. And if you show it to your manager or a colleague, he or she would organize it in a different way. So who is the right one? The one who had results as close as possible to what customers expect. So if all of you in several workshops have insisted on that SDK for iOS needs to be under integration, I would rather put it there, because the customers, the target audience, they expect it to be there.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what I think. You know, if the majority of people going through that says this is the right place, this is where you would put your documentation. Of course, you need a little bit more people to have a statistical sample. And this is the reason why you need to invest some time into that. But the actual preparation, as you can see, was super simple. You just go create a couple of cards which represent your idea, and then you just go ahead and do it. And if you want to take a look at the actual page, the kind of the real content, because this is real content from real product. BTP is one of the major products of SAP, right? Here are exactly those categories that I mentioned, the what's new with what's new and kind of about information. The categories are slightly different from what I use in the exercise. But under development, you will find the extensibility and some of the guides. This is from where I took some of the names. You have APIs and SDKs to clearly indicate that this is for developers, for example. And also take a look at the content here. I'm always talking about written documentation and user guides, but take a look at that here. We have also instructional videos. Nobody said you always must provide written documentation, right? Remember that. And it also needs to be structured and organized logically.